Okay, now let me get on to the other part of my duties up here, which is to introduce our guest speaker for today. It's an honour to do this for you, and we do meet on the traditional lands of the Kaurna First Nations peoples, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. As the Rotary Club of Adelaide's contribution to International Women's Day this year, you invited Libby Kosmala to tell you about her life as a Paralympian and her success in many sports, but in particular shooting. She mentioned the special equipment she used, and in particular a table made by Technology for the Ageing and Disability South Australia, known more by its initials Tadza. To them. As chair of Tadza, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the General Manager, Tracey Watters, to tell you more about this fabulous organisation and what it does to assist people who have particular needs not met by the mainstream offerings. Tadza was born from the heart of South Australian community some 40 years ago, and acknowledging the strength of assistive technologies, the creators of Tadza aspired to enhance people's lives and to create opportunities they may not otherwise have realised. In the true spirit of service above self, the people who scope, design and construct the wide variety of products are volunteers with a broad range of skills who, after productive working lives, wanted to give back to their community. There is a continuing need for volunteers to join Tadza, as you can well appreciate. The rewards are seeing the joy on the face of a person who never thought they would be able to ride a cycle. Tracey came to South Australia from New Zealand in 2009 and was the CEO of the Palliative Care South Australia until she was appointed as General Manager of Tadza in April 2019. Tracey will tell us about Tadza's shift towards sustainability in the now market-facing environment of disability sector and provide information and examples of the innovative solutions Tadza volunteers design and manufacture to support people with disability and age-related challenges to live as independently as possible and enjoy life to the fullest. Please welcome Tracey.
Thanks very much, Mike. I am to just disengage your laptop, yes?
Yeah.
And engage this one. Yes. And I've got to hold the mouth right to get it to do what it... I can't get that to work, sorry. Anyway, we really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you today about Tadza, and as Mike introduced the topic, we've been around for some 44 years since inception, and I have to say I'm particularly proud of my role in the organisation, but even more proud of the technical volunteers who really are the lifeblood of Tadza. So I think we're all set, ready to go. So Technology for Ageing and Disability, or Tadza for short, as I say, has been around for 44 years. So thanks for inviting us to your club luncheon today and your meeting. This opportunity is something that we relish because even though we've been around for 44 years, a little bit like your grants program, not enough people know about us. So that's part of the aim today. I also want to acknowledge that we're meeting on the lands of the Kaurna people. I respect their continuing connection to the land, and I know it remains as strong today as it was in the past, and I pay my respects to elders past and present too. So what does Tadza do? There is no real finite answer to that, and in trying to explain that, I'm just going to play a very short video. All things being equal, it should work, but it's not. Sound. Sorry. Don't worry about it. We'll just skip that little short video, which if you really want to see it, you can pop onto our Facebook page or our website. But really it was going to show you about the volunteers, what they do, what they think of what they do, and how it feeds back into their well-being. So really, this is an organisation of volunteers helping people. So what do we do? Our aim is to improve quality of life, and we do this by providing one-off solutions to one-off problems. And we do this by creating or modifying devices where there is nothing else commercially available. If you can find it off the shelf, we would obviously send you or direct you in that direction. But very often, even what's on the shelf needs modifying for a person with any form of limitation. And so our technical volunteers set their minds to how to make it work for you. We do this by leveraging the time and skills of experienced technical volunteers. They work out of their own back sheds, using their own tools and equipment, and may at times need to use commercial businesses for things such as maybe powder coating or other technology that we don't possess. We have been doing this, as I say, since 1978. It is a customised assistive technology organisation, and we are a member of the Federation of TAD. So there is a TAD in all of the states and territories except Northern Territory, so we continue to meet their needs in the NT as well. So what does Tadza make or modify? I said before there's no finite answer to this question. One-off problems to one-off solutions. So the next few slides I'm just going to show you some of those creations that we provide. I guess it's pretty simple to see the need for this little modification. It is a baby carrier, most often attached to a bike, but in this instance our client wanted it attached to her wheelchair, so I'm sure you can all agree it's a pretty nifty little solution for them. We had another client who has a mobility device, and he wanted it to be able to fit onto his car, but he didn't want it to block off the boot. So we had to create a movable solution for them so that it could take the weight that was required, but it could still not prevent the boot from being used. This gentleman has no arms, but he does live independently, and that is what he wants to do. He wants to pursue ongoing independence. And what he wanted us to do was create a facility so that he could prepare and eat food in his kitchen. I can imagine that's probably quite a hard task without having arms. In fact, I can't really imagine it. But the tech volunteers got their heads together and they made this, what looks to be a simple table, but it's mounted on, as you can see, a hydraulic hoist, and he uses his foot to operate that. So he can raise or lower his table. I think it can get to about 150 mils off the floor or up to a metre above the floor level. This project took 367 hours to complete. Enabling participation in sport and recreation, that's another objective of what we try to achieve. And you can see in this picture, you've got a pretty happy young lady on a bicycle. You can see that she's got the full thoracic support, so she obviously had some issues with her core strength. The outriggers are similar to training wheels, but so much sturdier, and they're modified. The accessories are modified so that you just pull a pin and it becomes an ordinary bike. All of that comes off, and you can stick it on the back of the bike carrier with the rest of the bikes, and the whole family can go cycling. Gives opportunity for them to do things with family and friends that previously may not have been able to. You can also see in this slide the bowling chute. So this young lady was at school, she wanted to be able to participate in the bowling class. So one of our plastics guys, I think he was into dentistry in his working life, but he works significantly with plastics. He just converted an old piece of plumbing pipe into a ball chute, mounted it, and now she can continue to participate with her classmates. This little fellow came to us and as a young man, and we've seen him a few times since because they grow. He wanted to be able, he was a wheelchair user, but he did actually like to shimmy around the floor on his elbows because the kids in the classroom, they all can get on the floor as well, so he wanted to be able to roll around on the floor with them, and he was able to get around the classroom easier on the floor than he was in his chair. So Joe Tiesti, one of our volunteers who is still with us today, he created this kind of ladder that gets hooked onto the wheelchair. This young man has got enough strength in his upper body to be able to just shimmy down off his chair, do whatever it is he wants to do, and then he just elbows his way back up. So the rungs, as he grew, his chair grew, so we've modified this piece of equipment, I think 3 times now. It's gotten longer, but it's also gotten wider. In this picture, no surprises for guessing what it is. It's an automated art easel. So we were asked by our client, a young artist from the APY lands, if we could custom make an easel that would allow her to manoeuvre her canvas so that she could paint anywhere on the canvas. She had one arm herself, so she could only use one arm. And so this piece of equipment, you saw in the last picture, it was actually quite large, but it could also withdraw to a small canvas, or it could have a big canvas on it. She uses a remote control to turn that canvas around so that she can paint wherever she needs to. And I think looking at her, she's pretty happy about having or being able to continue to paint, because that's what she loves to do. Bed poles are an item that we are often called upon to custom design and fit. No bed pole is the same. There are huge standards that surround the use of bed poles and bed fittings. So it depends on what the client's needs are, what the client's limitations are, and as to what the end result will be. But basically, we make plenty of these. Our volunteers will come out and visit the client in their bed. They will create the space that they need to work in, and then come back to their back sheds and simply design and build the piece of equipment. This little item here gave us our greatest Facebook reach, actually. We put a post on Facebook to say that we had a call from a client. They needed a drinking aid, but they wanted it to be able to manoeuvre from the bed to the chair, from the chair alongside the wheelchair as well. So we put our heads together about this and came up with the great invention of the office chair. So we put a post on Facebook and said, does anybody have an office chair that we might be able to use to modify this device? We got 13,000 hits on that post, and so many chairs, I can't tell you how many we had to get rid of. So we've now got enough office chairs to do this sort of work. But it's also another piece of equipment that, since people have seen its use and its simplicity, we get orders for them all the time. Walking frames are another regular piece of equipment that we're often called upon to modify, and no modification is the same. It will depend on what you need it for. In this image, you can see that the person wanted to be able to take their BiPAP machine and their humidifier with them, and I think also their oxygen cylinder. So this was an adaptation that we created to accommodate that. We do lots of different types. In this one you'll see that it's actually a little scooter gopher, but we've attached an attachment to be able to put the walking frame on the back of that. And then we also do things like extending them and creating gutter frames, so as people become more dependent and can't hold as easily as they used to, maybe they need some arm gutters for that. This is just 3 examples. We do heaps of them. Another common one is if somebody suffers a stroke and they lose the use of one hand or another, we will be able to modify your walker so that instead of having to apply your brakes with both hands, we can rejig that and you can apply it with simply one hand and it'll put both brakes on. This was going to be another little video of one of our technical volunteers and a solution he made for a woman who was pretty much bedbound, but she was an artist and she wanted to be able to have her artwork, her art table sort of come to her. So Eric, who is our technical volunteer, he created this solution, and I know you can't hear him. He reminds me terribly of the older version of Phil Collins, so I'm about to sort of try and get him onto the drums to see if he might be able to do that. But you can see just in this little short video, again, it's just customising to the needs, the expressed needs of the client. The other program that we do provide is the Freedom Wheels program, and this is about getting children, young people and adults living with disabilities to ride a bike or a trike. In this image you can see 3 young people, the young girl with the pink helmet on and the big pink bike. She found it really difficult to pedal, so could not get the coordination working with her feet. And so our technical volunteers put their heads together and thought, well, we can get her on the bike, she's happy on the bike, we could even get those handlebars moved forward, but what were we going to do to get her to be able to mobilise? So they did something with the chain, and all she had to do, both her feet, was this pump action, and she was off and running. So she was set to bike. The young man in the top right hand, this side, he has no arms as well, but he wanted to be able to get around the neighbourhood with a bunch of mates who were all on bikes. So again, we just modified the handlebars, actually made some specific handlebars for him, put them on there, raised them, pulled them forward. He's able to direct his bike and steer his bike with his shoulders. He does have the trainer, the outriggers on for stability, but I sense that once you get going, those probably used without that now. And the young girl in the bottom of that picture, again, is just an example of the thoracic support that we can provide for young people and adults who have issues with either balance or core strength. So this is just about making sure that they don't sort of wobble around on that seat and cause themselves any injuries. There are very few conditions really that the Freedom Wheels range of modifications and technology can't support, and at a recent Freedom Wheels Experience Day, which we're running right around the state at the moment, this young lady was so keen to try and ride. Her brother was able to ride, and we didn't have a thoracic support on that day that was small enough for this young lady. So in true Tadza style, we just tied a polar fleece around, our project manager's polar fleece, and got it tied on there, and you can see her brother was pretty happy about pushing her around Keith Stevenson Park, and I think she was pretty happy about being able to do so as well. This is a new product that we are hoping to introduce to the Freedom Wheels range, and again, this is about just improving the product so that people with balance issues can continue to ride if riding's what they want, but equally this is about a touring opportunity. So a person with cerebral palsy or with balance issues can still use their legs, but sometimes the weight bearing as they get older, it becomes a problem, and the general thing is that they will move into a wheelchair. This is an intermediary where we're hoping that it will stop that quick transition from being walking and mobile and then having to depend on a wheelchair because of that limitation. So we are about to embark on this as a new product. We want to get ourselves a couple of experienced frame runners and start to put it into our program and have people trying those out for themselves. So in closing, you might ask about how we're funded to provide these services. Until 2018, Tadza was in receipt of government block funding. I think they got about $80,000 a year. But as the NDIS was rolled out, that ceased, as did Disability SA, and we were told to become market-facing and generate your income that way, which of course was a really big change. We were co-located next to Disability SA. All of the occupational therapists, physiotherapists, allied health professionals were linked into Disability SA, so the referrers were right next to us. They got out of their chair and came into our office, spoke to Ralph, got the solution they needed. That no longer happens, that's closed down. So now we had to turn ourselves to be very market-facing and start to actually promote and market ourselves to all of the now NDIS providers, because that's where the occupational therapists and the physiotherapists are all working from. So generally a client or a funder would receive an invoice from us. It would be an invoice that covers the volunteers' out-of-pocket expenses, the costs of materials and incidental costs such as mileage. A small service charge is made to recover our overheads so that we can continue to provide these services beyond the funding that was ceased. We are now a registered NDIS provider, so anyone with an NDIS plan is able to seek their solutions from Tadza. And in closing, I would just say that there are many ways that you can help. We were talking earlier about how to support Tadza. Well, you can become a volunteer, as Mike said. We are always looking for people with technical skills who have their own tools and equipment and their own facilities, and who can join the team and become a technical volunteer. You could just become a member. If you jump on our website, you can do that. You can donate today. You could leave a bequest in your will, become a monthly giver. But of course, the best thing that you could do for us is to tell people that Tadza is there to help them if they have needs. So I encourage you to do that. Thanks so much for listening today.
Thank you very much, Tracey.
You're welcome.
Do we have any questions, please? We do, David.
Thank you very much, Tracey. Just prosthetic limbs. Do you guys ever get into customised prosthetic limbs?
No, but we work with people that have customised prosthetic limbs. Obviously, Novita Tech have got a big department in that regard here in South Australia, but we are often called upon to go and work with them in helping design that with equipment in mind.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Frank?
My question sort of follows on from the last one. Do you work with Novita Tech? I mean, it was one of the charities established by this club, and of course it's become quite commercial now. And the second question that flows from that is, have you commercialised any of the technology you've developed?
Thank you, that's a really good question. To answer with Novita Tech, and in fact we run monthly bike clinics with Tadza technical volunteers. We take the bikes along, the trikes along, and indeed they have their own set of race runners, which is a competitive style of the frame runner that I was referring to. So we work very closely with the OTs, with Novita Tech, and they've got a hub now of regional centres, so we're also starting to furnish all of them with Freedom Wheels assessment kits. Your second question was about the customisation of the technology. The short answer is no, we haven't customised any of it, commercialised it, pardon me. And I think there are several reasons for that. How do you do that? But equally, most of the time, we have just done a project for a young man who has cerebral palsy. He wants to go and see his father in Melbourne. He cannot fly. There's no way he can keep his brace on. So we've worked with the Jetstar and Qantas engineers to create a brace that he can now jump on a plane, use this brace. It's got a quick release so that if there's anything happens, they can get him, out in an emergency situation. That came to my mind about perhaps being commercialised, but of course we've already told the world about that. There's been no confidentiality things signed, so I guess that's a step that we need to learn about in order to be able to implement that.
And by the way, OT stands for?
Occupational therapist.
We're as bad as Rotary with jargon.
Oh,
Thank you for your... Is it on?
Yep.
Yeah,
We can
okay.
hear
Thank you. Most of us, when we were younger at least, were able-bodied people and enjoyed sports. And I just wonder whether you partner with any organisations that provide those sort of opportunities for people with disabilities.
absolutely.
Or have any plans? Or?
Yes, so there has been a quite an explosion really of organisations who work with clients with any form of limitation or disability. And part of a project that we've run out since 2019, 20, we call it My Active Life. So we're working with our other member states to make sure that participation in sport and recreation of your choice is enabled. And so we are reaching out to all of those organisations. We were recently in Whyalla. We went and visited to the Bedford Social Options Group. The second day we were there, we joined with a community group at the local police safety centre where it was an enclosed area, but there was sort of great paths and bikeways and lights and giveaway sessions, so we could have a really fun day with the kids on bikes, and adults, I might add. So we are pretty engaged with all of those organisations.
Just one question. Are you,
Sorry.
are you, what about I noticed most of it was the younger people that you're helping, which is fantastic, by the way. What about the older people who have these disabilities?
I would say it's a 50-50 split between young people and seniors in our project work. And in fact, yesterday I was just doing an analysis because we're about to have a quarterly budget review to see what that percentage was, and it was really just about 50-50. The thing about older people is they're not actually that keen on having their photos taken, so I don't have as much photographic content to share. And that's another role. We're trying to look for somebody that's got photographic skills that might be able to encourage that to happen. And I know our technical volunteers have all got mobile phones, but none of them are actually particularly good photographers. No. So when we say we want a good photo, they show us something like it's a wheel and a cog, and I'm like, no, we want a big picture. So yes, we've got work to do there.
Yeah, because one of the things we're doing with older people are the walkers. I know we hate thinking we're going to get to a walker, but sooner or later you are. They've usually got very narrow wheels and they tend to get stuck in things. So one of the things we do is put bigger wheels on so you can go bushwalking with your walker. So there's the sorts of things we're doing in the aged area.
And there are a few photos on our website with the aged projects.
Heidi.
I'm just interested in how you manage your volunteers. Are they working from their own homes, and how do you manage the work health and safety and all those other things that come along with managing volunteers in this day and age with work, legislative requirements? And do you know about some Rotary clubs that are doing amazing things, that are doing similar things to help modify resources, like the Rotary Club of Largs Bay that we heard about at the Rotary District Conference on the weekend, who are doing some great stuff with wheelchairs?
Thank you. Yes, we do know about the Rotary clubs that are working in the modification space, along with the men's sheds. In reference to your question about managing technical volunteers, I don't think I'd use the word managing. However, Ralph, who is our project manager, he is really invested in this part of the work. We often get people say, "Well, what about if we find you a shed and you have your own shed and they can all come together and work?" That's not that's not Tadza's footprint. Our technical volunteers, they're all insured. We have accident cover, we have volunteer cover, we have driving cover. So the insurances are there, and then the responsibility that lays on our organisation is about making sure that we are always engaged with them, saying, have you done your safety check? Is your shed, have you got your tools tagged and tested? So there are a few criteria, but essentially because they're working in their own back sheds, the actual, I guess, exposure to risk is lessened somewhat. And many of them say, please stay out of my shed.
And don't worry, Heidi, as chair, I do have some sleepless nights.
One of the issues for NDIS is support in remote and rural areas. Now, I wonder about a place like Alice Springs, which was a part of the great state back at the turn of the century. Are you able to help in places like that?
Yes, yes. So we, you saw one of the slides was we're working in the APY lands, which is fantastic. We do work in the Northern Territory, including Alice Springs and Darwin and Katherine and anywhere in between. Very recently we've made, and I don't know if I should even tell you, but we do it. We had a request, and because the occupational therapists tell us that this is occupation, we've made a few smoking aids for people as well, which I know. They're the non-Facebook ones, you know, we don't really go out and promote that. And when we first got the request, it was like, oh, wow, I don't think we can do that. Yeah, absolutely, yes. So, and that's where we got to with it. It is not we're not judging anybody for anything. So if we can provide a solution to a person who wants to continue to smoke but doesn't have the hands to do so, then we do. So we've made a few of those as well.
What about the shooting ones?
The shooting?
The shooting, the guy that puffs his rifle, puffs to fire his rifle.
I don't know about that one.
Oh,
Chairman.
okay. Smoking
I've
aids.
missed that.
But also, a number of people, we heard Libby, a number of people want to be able to shoot, and they don't have hands to be able to pull the trigger. So we've recently devised something using a bit of equipment that came from the United States, enables this young Aboriginal lad at the shooting range at the moment, that's the only place he's allowed to do this, to puff and fire the gun.
Yeah.
He blows into a tube and that fires the trigger.
I hadn't actually caught up with that project had been finished, so I'm really, that's really good. You must have heard about that at this morning's meeting. Yeah.
One last question.
Thank you very much. A very interesting and inspirational talk, and it's good to see that you've had to evolve and adapt according to your funding abilities, and also the modernisation of terminology and technology and so forth. I was very interested in that terminology side and discrimination and modernisation. We talk about handicapped people and disabled people. To me, that itself is a bit discriminatory. And I was a volunteer at the Paralympics in Sydney, and I heard the term handy-capable. And to me, that means a lot better than all those other terms. Just a comment. Thank you.
I agree entirely.
One last question. Here it is.
It's on. I think, thank you for the talk. Probably all of us have to be impacted at some point in time in our lives with what being disabled means, and as we get older, we all start to experience some of this. And I just wanted to share an experience I had the other day, which really took me as to how things and a lot of what you're doing can actually happen and give disabled people independence. Because I think as we get older, the independence is so important to people. And I was sitting in a coffee shop at Rove and watched a man struggle across a road with his walker to what was a 4-cab, or one of those 2-cab utilities, which is a Volkswagen, believe it or not. And, you know, there's a lot of traffic around. He got across, not a problem. He picked something up in the middle of his walker, lifted it, and the walker collapsed. He opened his back door of the 2-cab unit and put it up there quite easily. Somehow he pressed a button which allowed a little unit to come from underneath the car such that he could step up into the driver's cab, start the engine, the unit came in underneath the car, and he drove off, totally independent, which I think is one of the greatest things of all of us, as we know, as people get older, They want their independence. And whoever did it, and if it was you people, I think it's fantastic, but it showed me how important it was to provide people with the ability to be independent. So
Yes.
well done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In answer to Reg's question too, one of the things I'm learning as I get older too is that we actually all have different abilities. All of us have different abilities. Some people it affects some way, other people it affects in other ways. So we can't discriminate.
No, we need to celebrate difference, actually.
Tracey,
The world needs that.
thank you very much.
Oh, thank
Please
you.
accept this little certificate.